Welcome back, everybody. We are diving deep today into food safety and quality
Yeah.
and legality. We're going to figure out just what it takes to make sure the food we're eating is the best it can be, top notch.
Yeah. It's really interesting. There's so many little details that people don't even think about.
Exactly. And we've got two things that are going to help us figure this out. First, we're going to be looking at BRCGS, the BRCGS food safety standard. That's like the big one in the industry.
Yeah, for sure.
And then we've also got some awesome insights from UKFTS. They're a consulting company, and they help businesses really understand all these regulations.
Yeah, they're like guides. It can be really confusing, all this stuff.
Oh, for sure. So let's jump right into BRCGS. And one thing that really, really struck me was this focus on whistleblowing.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I don't mean like, hey, Bob, your lunch looks a little funky. I'm not talking about that.
No.
I'm talking about like a real system.
Yeah, like a formal, official way for employees to say, hey, something's not right, without being afraid of, getting in trouble.
Yeah. So what does that look like in real life? What does BRCGS actually want companies to do?
Okay, so there's this part of the standard, it's clause 1.1.6, and it gets right to the point. It says that companies need to have a way for employees to report things. Concerns about safety, if something's not authentic, legality, quality, all of that without being scared of, retribution, whatever that means.
So it's not just like a suggestion box in the break room, right? You're talking about like a real system.
Exactly. And they have a good reason for that, too. The Association of Certified Fraud Examiners? They found that most of the time, the way these bad things get caught is because an employee reports it.
Wow, that's huge. So these systems aren't just a nice to have. They're really important for catching problems, like early on.
Absolutely. And BRCGS goes even further. They say you got to have anonymity and confidentiality in these systems, maybe even use a third party so nobody knows who said what.
So you're really giving employees, no matter what level they're at, the power to speak up without worrying about their job,
Exactly. And it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
If you're like the new guy and you see something messed up, you're not going to say anything if you think you're going to get fired.
No way.
So BRCGS gets that. They want everyone to feel safe, to say something if they see something.
And it protects the company too, right? Like imagine if there's a quality issue and nobody speaks up.
Oh, it could be a disaster.
Recalls, bad reputation, lawsuits. It's a nightmare.
Exactly. And here's something interesting too. Even if a company works with brands that have their own whistleblowing systems, BRCGS still wants them to have their own separate one.
Wait, really? So two systems. Seems a bit much, doesn't it?
Well, think about it. Not every problem is going to be specific to one brand, right?
Oh, I see what you mean.
Like, imagine a manufacturer. They make stuff for a bunch of different brands. Maybe there's something wrong with their equipment that affects all the products. That's when having their own whistleblowing system is really important.
So it's like a safety net, to kick any problem no matter which brand is involved.
That's it. It's about being extra careful and making sure things are safe and good quality. And for you listening, if you ever see something sketchy at work, knowing about this stuff can help you speak up. You could actually stop a big problem from happening.
Okay, so BRCGS is definitely serious about whistleblowing. What other things stood out to you in the standard?
Let's see. Resources. That's another one they're big on. And we're not just talking about money here.
Okay, interesting. What else does BRCGS consider a resource?
So clause 1.1.7 goes into this. It basically says, management, you need to give your people what they need, the people and the money, to make safe, real, legal products that are good quality.
So you got to have the money to invest in safety and all that, but you also need the right people with the right skills. Makes sense.
Exactly. And the auditors, they don't just take your word for it.
Oh.
They look deeper. They'll see if you had any problems, any nonconformities during past audits. If they see the same problems over and over, they'll think, maybe they're not giving their people enough resources or training.
Yeah, so it's not enough to just throw money at it. You need a team that knows what they're doing, right?
Exactly. It's got to be a long-term solution, not just a quick fix. BRCGS wants companies to build a culture of quality.
Right, where everyone gets how important it is to keep those standards high.
Exactly. And that kind of leads us to the next thing, knowledge.
Knowledge.
Yes.
Okay, tell me more. What does BRCGS expect companies to know?
So clause 1.1.8 is all about staying ahead of the game. It's like, hey, you can't just know what's happening now. You got to know what's coming next. The newest science and technology, industry best practices, new risks, and of course, any new laws that come out.
Wow, so much to keep track of. But it makes sense, right? The food industry is always changing.
Oh, absolutely. There are always new threats popping up, regulations changing. Science is always moving forward. You can't be stuck in the past.
So how can companies actually do all of that? Like stay informed about everything?
PRCGS has some ideas, joining industry groups, subscribing to legal updates, working with government agencies. It's about being proactive, seeking out information, staying plugged in.
It sounds like a lot, especially when you think about things like raw material authenticity.
Yeah, that's a big one. With all this stuff coming from different parts of the world, it's tough to know if you're really getting what you paid for.
It's like detective work, tracing things back, making sure it's all legit.
Exactly. BRCGS takes that stuff very seriously.
So BRCGS sets a really high bar for food safety and all that. But let's be honest, keeping up with all these rules, it's got to be a lot, right? Especially for businesses that don't have a whole team dedicated to this stuff.
Yeah, it can be. That's where UKFTS comes in. They're like a guide, a partner to help businesses figure it all out, make it work in real life.
Okay, perfect. Let's talk about UKFTS then. How do they help companies meet all these standards?
Okay, so UKFTS, they do a lot. They help companies get all kinds of certifications, not just BRCGS. SALSA, RSPO, organic compliance, red tractor audits, all sorts of things.
So they're like a one-stop shop.
Pretty much. And they don't just give you a list of rules, they tailor their services to what each business needs. For example, one thing they offer is gap analysis and internal audits.
Okay, let's break that down. What's gap analysis?
Think of it like a practice run. Before the real audit, UKFTS comes in and looks at your systems, your processes, your paperwork, and they compare it to whatever certification you're going for.
Ah, so it's like a reality check. See where you're doing good and where you need to improve.
Exactly. That way you can fix things before the real audit happens.
That makes sense. And what about internal audits?
Internal audits are like when you check yourself. Regularly you make sure your systems and processes are still good. UKFTS can help you make a good internal audit program and train your people to do them right.
So it's all about constantly getting better, always looking for ways to improve.
Right. You're not just waiting for someone to tell you what's wrong. You're being proactive.
I like that. And that seems to be something UKFTS is really big on, right?
Absolutely. It's not just about passing audits, it's about building a good culture, a culture of food safety and quality. That helps everyone. The company, the employees, and of course the people eating the food.
I get it. Now, you mentioned that UKFTS helps with HACCP plans too, right?
Oh yeah, that's a big one.
I know that's really important in the food industry,
Hmm.
but honestly, I don't really know what it means.
Oh, sure. HACCP stands for Hazard Analysis and Critical Control Points.
Catchy.
It's basically a way to find and control any dangers in making food. Like it's designed to stop problems before they even happen.
Okay, that sounds important. What does UKFTS actually do with HACCP?
They can help you make a HACCP plan from scratch. Or if you already have one, they can check it and make sure it's good, that it follows all the rules for whatever certification you're going for.
So they're like the HACCP experts guiding companies through all the confusing stuff.
Exactly. And they do training too. So everyone, no matter what their job is, understands the rules and what they need to do.
Right. It's a team effort. From the people on the production line to the CEO.
Exactly. And you know what else? They help with supplier audits too.
Supplier audits. Why is that so important?
Because if your supplier isn't good, it doesn't matter how good you are. It can mess up the whole thing.
It's all connected, huh?
It is. It's like a chain. UKFTS can help you check your suppliers, make sure they're doing things right, build good relationships.
Yeah, so everybody's working together, all the way from the farm to the fork, to make sure the food is safe and good quality.
That's the goal.
Okay, I'm starting to get the big picture. It's about creating this whole system, right, where everyone plays their part.
You got it. And UKFTS is there to help companies every step of the way.
I know that UKFTS does a lot of different certifications, not just BRCGS. Can we take a closer look at some of them? What makes them different?
Absolutely. So let's start with salsa. If BRCGS is like the top level, salsa is like a stepping stone for smaller businesses. It's not quite as intense, but it still shows you're serious about safety and quality.
So it's a way for smaller companies to prove themselves, even if they're not quite ready for the big leagues yet.
Exactly. It can help them get into new markets, build trust with people who don't know their brand yet.
Okay, cool. Now, what about RSPO? I've been seeing that logo pop up everywhere.
That's the Roundtable on Sustainable Palm Oil. It's all about making sure palm oil is sourced ethically. A lot of people are concerned about how palm oil is produced.
Yeah, it's gotten a bad rap for its environmental impact.
Right. So this certification shows that you're getting your palm oil in a way that's good for the planet. They're protecting rainforests and animals.
That's awesome. And what about organic? I feel like most people understand what that means. But how does the actual certification process work?
So organic certification is all about making sure you're following the rules. No synthetic pesticides, herbicides, or GMOs. They come and inspect your farm, audit your paperwork, and they keep checking to make sure you're still doing things right.
So it's not just a word you can throw around, huh?
Nope, it's the real deal. Which is good for consumers who are willing to pay extra for organic food.
Totally. What about Red Tractor? I see that one on a lot of British products.
That's a UK thing. It covers a bunch of different standards: food safety, animal welfare, the environment, all sorts of things. It's an easy way for people to know that the food they're buying is good quality.
So it's a way for consumers to feel good about what they're buying,
Right.
knowing it meets high standards.
Exactly.
Wow, we've covered so much already. BRCGS, UKFTS, all these different certifications. It's a lot to do.
Exactly.
Now, before we move on, I wanted to touch on one more thing that UKFTS does. Food labeling.
Ah, yes. Food labeling. A lot of people don't think about it, but it can be tricky.
Really? I mean, it just seems like listing the ingredients. What's so hard about that?
It's more than that. There are rules about allergens, nutrition facts, marketing claims, and you gotta get it all right. If you mess up, you can get in trouble.
Wow, so it's not just about being honest, it's about following the law, too.
Exactly. And that's another area where UKFTS can help. They have people who know all the rules and can help you make labels that are accurate and easy to understand.
Like they're holding your hand through the whole process.
You could say that.
Okay, so we've talked about what food labeling is and why it's important. But why is accurate labeling so crucial? Like, what's the big deal?
Food labeling is all about protecting people. It's about giving them the information they need to make good choices about their food.
They're being open and honest, right?
Exactly. And when people feel like they can trust the information on the label, they're more likely to trust the company and the whole industry.
That trust is super important, especially now when people are more aware of what they're eating and want more transparency from the food industry.
Absolutely. People want to know where their food comes from, how it was produced, if it was sustainable, if the animals were treated well. They want to know everything.
It's not just about how it tastes or how much it costs anymore. People care about where their food comes from, how it was made.
Exactly. And it's really changing the food industry for the better.
It's encouraging, right? Seeing these changes happening.
It is. Companies are starting to see that transparency and responsibility are good for business.
It's a win-win. Safer, higher quality food for everyone.
Absolutely. And the best part is a lot of companies are being proactive. They're going above and beyond, using technology, being transparent. It's great to see.
They're setting a great example for everyone.
Exactly. And that leads us to a really interesting question.
Okay, what is it?
We've seen how important accurate and honest food labeling is, and how companies like UKFTS can help. But what happens when companies go even further? What does it look like to build a real culture of food safety and quality that's woven into everything they do?
That's a great question. It's about going beyond just checking boxes and making it part of who they are.
Right, exactly.
I'd love to talk more about that. But first, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back to explore this idea of building a culture of food safety and quality. Stay tuned. Welcome back, everybody. We're still deep in the weeds here, talking all about food safety and quality and making sure everything is on the up and up.
Yeah, and right before the break, we were talking about food labeling.
That's right. You know, something we see every day. But it turns out it's a lot more complicated than I thought.
It really is. It's not just slapping a label on something and calling it a day.
So we've touched on how complicated it can be. But what does BRCGS say about all of this? What do they want companies to do about food labeling?
Well, BRCGS is mostly about the production, making sure things are safe and all that. But they definitely know that labeling is important too.
Makes sense.
They want to see that companies are doing things right, that the labels follow all the rules, the laws, and that they're not trying to trick anybody.
Right. It's got to be honest.
Yeah, it's all part of that bigger picture, that focus on quality and safety that BRCGS is all about.
So the auditors are looking at the labels too, huh?
Oh yeah, they'll look at how the label's designed, what's on it, who approved it. They'll also check how you're handling allergens and if the nutrition information is right.
It seems like there's a lot of ways to mess that up.
Hmm.
Are there like common mistakes that companies make with labeling?
Allergens are a big one. If you get that wrong, it can be really bad for people with allergies.
Oh, for sure. So what does BRCGS want companies to do about allergens?
They want to see a solid system For managing allergens, I mean. And not just at the end when you're putting the label on, it's got to be from the very beginning, from sourcing the ingredients all the way to the finished product.
So it's not enough to just list the allergens. You have to make sure they don't accidentally get into other products and make sure everyone knows what's what.
Exactly. And then there's the nutrition information. People are more and more concerned about what they're eating.
Yeah, that's true. Although I have to admit, I find those nutrition labels so confusing.
Oh, I know. But BRCGS wants them to be accurate and easy to understand. So they'll check the serving sizes, the calories, how much fat, carbs, and protein there is, all that stuff.
What about all those claims you see on packages, like low fat or high in fiber? Are there rules about that?
Definitely. They have to be true, first of all. You can't just say something's healthy if it's not. You got to be able to back it up.
Right, so you're not misleading anyone.
Exactly. And that's another thing UKFTS can help with. They have people who are experts in all those labeling rules. They can help you make a label that follows the rules and makes sense to people.
It's like having a translator
Mm.
for the language of food labels.
Uh-huh. Yeah, something like that.
Okay, so we've talked about what needs to be on the label and the kinds of mistakes companies make. But why is it so important to get it right?
It all comes down to keeping people safe and healthy. Food labeling gives people the information they need to make good decisions about the food they're buying.
It's about being honest and transparent.
Exactly. And when people feel like they can trust the information on the label, it builds trust in the whole company.
Yeah, that trust is important, especially now. People want to know what's in their food, where it came from, how it was made.
That's right. Consumers want to know the whole story.
It's not just about how it tastes or the price anymore. People care about the bigger picture, like where it came from, how it was made, all that.
Exactly. And that's pushing the whole industry to be better.
It's a good thing, right? Seeing all these positive changes.
It is. Companies are starting to understand that being transparent and responsible, that's good for business too.
It's a win-win. Consumers get better food, companies build trust, everybody's happy.
That's right. And you know what else is cool? A lot of companies are going above and beyond. They're not waiting for someone to tell them what to do. They're using technology, being open about their practices. It's really great to see.
They're leading the way, showing everyone what's possible.
Exactly. And that brings us to a really interesting question.
Oh, what's that?
We've talked about how important it is to have accurate and honest food labeling and how companies like UKFTS can help. But what happens when companies want to do even more? How do they build a culture where food safety and quality are at the heart of everything they do, not just a box to check?
That's a great question. It's about making those values a part of the company's DNA, right?
Exactly. And I think that's something we should definitely explore further.
And we're back. Welcome back to the show. This deep dive has been really eye-opening for me. I'm learning so much about this world of food safety and quality and how much goes into it.
It is fascinating, isn't it? From BRCGS and all those standards to what UKFTS does to help companies, and of course those labels who knew there was so much to them.
Right. But before we wrap things up, I'm curious. What's next? What's coming down the pike? What trends are going to shape the future of food safety and all that?
That's a great question. One thing we definitely can't ignore is technology.
Technology. You know, when I think about food safety, I don't immediately think of computers and gadgets and all that.
Yeah, it's not the first thing that comes to mind, but think about blockchain. Have you heard of that?
I have. Isn't that like a cryptocurrency thing?
It is, but it's also changing the game for traceability in the food industry. We can track ingredients from the moment they're harvested all the way to the store shelf. Like, we know exactly where everything came from.
So no more shady suppliers or, mystery meat.
Exactly. Blockchain can verify the origin and authenticity of ingredients, which cuts down on food fraud and makes the whole system more transparent.
That sounds straight out of Star Trek.
Yeah.
Is this really happening now, or is it more of a future thing?
It might sound futuristic, but it's already being used in some parts of the industry. And there's more. AI and machine learning are making a big impact too.
AI. Like in the kitchen. That's wild. What's that even look like?
Well, AI is really good at analyzing data, so it can look at tons of information and find patterns. It can actually predict problems before they even happen.
So it's like having a super smart food safety inspector working 24/7.
Pretty much. AI can help companies catch potential issues early on, which means safer, better quality food for everyone.
It's amazing what technology can do these days.
It really is. And let's not forget about consumers. They're becoming more aware, too, more interested in where their food comes from and how it's made.
Yeah, it feels like there's this big push for transparency. People want to know the story behind their food, not just what it tastes like.
Absolutely. Consumers are asking more questions. They want to know about sourcing, sustainability, animal welfare, everything.
It's not just about filling your belly anymore. It's about values and ethics, too. Making choices you feel good about.
And that's a good thing, right? It's pushing the whole industry in a better direction.
Definitely. It's encouraging to see companies stepping up, realizing that being open and honest is good for business, too.
It's a win-win. Better food for everyone and more trust between companies and consumers. I love that. And you know, it's really inspiring. A lot of companies aren't just doing the bare minimum anymore. They're going above and beyond. They're the ones driving these changes, embracing technology, and making transparency part of who they are.
It's awesome to see companies taking the lead like that.
It really is. It makes you feel good about the future of food, you know? It's all moving towards a better place, more sustainable, more transparent, and more focused on what consumers want.
I like the sound of that. So we've talked about standards, certifications, what UKFTS does. We've even peeked into the future of food safety. But before we go, I want to leave our listeners with something to think about.
Ooh, I like where this is going. Hit us with it.
So we've learned that accurate and honest food labeling is important, and companies like UKFTS can help businesses get there. We've seen that technology is going to play a big role in the future of food, and consumers are becoming more aware and demanding more from the companies they buy from.
So much good stuff happening.
But here's the big question. How can companies go beyond just following the rules? How do they build a real culture of food safety and quality? Something that's part of everything they do.
That's a great question. It's about going beyond the checklist, right? It's about those values being at the heart of the company, not just something you do because you have to.
Exactly. It's about everyone in the company, from the top to the bottom, getting it. Understanding that food safety and quality are everyone's responsibility.
It's about working with consumers, too, seeing them as partners in this whole thing.
And it's about always trying to do better, to learn, to innovate, to change with the times.
Food safety is a journey, not a destination.
I like that. So to everyone listening, we challenge you to think about this. How can you support companies that are going above and beyond? How can you push for more transparency and responsibility in the food industry?
And how can you, as an individual, help create a culture of food safety and quality? We all have a role to play in this.
We hope this deep dive has given you a better understanding of how this whole world works. It's complex, but it's so important.
We encourage you to keep learning, keep asking questions, and keep the conversation going.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. Stay curious, stay informed, and keep exploring the world of food.
And remember, food safety is everyone's responsibility. Let's work together to make sure the food we eat is safe, delicious, and something we can all feel good about.